I'd like to welcome everyone to this evening's Planning Commission meeting for the Village of Morton. Today is April 22nd, and the first order of duty is roll call.
Zobrist.
Here.
Farrell.
Here.
Keach.
Here.
Neff.
Here.
Fick.
Here.
Ritterbush.
Here.
Smock.
Here.
Guile.
Here.
DeWeese.
Here.
Orm.
Great, thank you. Next order this evening is the approval of minutes from our meeting on March 25th, 2019. Those minutes were included in the packet for review. Any alterations, questions, or comments on those before we move to approve those? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Call when ready.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. 3.
Great. Next section of tonight's meeting is the public hearing portion. We have 3 petitions up this evening. Before we get to those, our council has a brief note for the public.
Thank you. Public hearings are being held tonight pursuant to published notice. Any person wishing to make a comment to the Plan Commission will be afforded an opportunity to do so and will give their testimony under oath or affirmation. At the conclusion of the public hearing, the Plan Commission will make a recommendation to the Village Board. The Plan Commission makes recommendations only. The Village Board is responsible for taking final action on these matters.
Great, thank you. First petition this evening is 19-2, special use. The subject property is 2230 Veterans Road, currently zoned for residential. RS, actually. They're looking for special use. Obviously, all 3 of tonight's petitions, as you've probably looked at in your packet, are for solar panels. Are these all the same installer, Roger?
No.
Okay. So
2 of the 3 are.
given that, let's go ahead and open this up. If there's anyone from the public that would like to speak regarding the 2230 Veterans Road property, you're welcome to. Are there any questions here from the table about this petition? I reviewed it, and Roger, we're under the assumption here that as these come before us, they've already sort of passed the initial muster through the village approval process. So really for us, this comes down to making sure that the zoning isn't fit with the surrounding area and with the intended use.
I mean, we made the notice. We mailed out to everyone within 250 feet, like we do for every case. So if there are objectors, they would be here.
I have a question, if I could.
Yeah.
Just as we're going to see more of these, the criteria that we're using to approve or possibly deny them. I mean, I know we were shown the layouts and which side of the house they're on, and whether they're going to be seen from the street. I haven't seen that kind of information, but I'm just curious, what would be some of the criteria that we would use to potentially deny some of these? Because I know a lot of the decisions we make don't get into that kind of detail. It's more like a use of property. So maybe I could get some clarification from someone who could answer what might be a scenario where we would deny one of these.
Well, I'll answer that probably with a lawyerly and not quite direct enough answer.
That's all right.
You don't have, as compared to variance, under a variance, you have a very rigid set of criteria that you're to apply to an application to ensure that the applicant is proven on a more likely than not basis that they've met the elements set forth in our code, which mirrors statute. When it comes to special use, you're not guided by that kind of rigid rubric. So you are looking at it and making a recommendation to the board that from a land use standpoint, you feel this is or is not an advisable step for the village. Ultimately, the village board takes action on the award of the special use, which makes it a legislative act. So the factors you cited are all relevant considerations in terms of a scenario where you may choose to deny it. It's always hard to come up with the right fact pattern offhand, but I think that one of the considerations that's often kind of germane for special use is whether it would cause adverse effects to neighboring property owners. And if there was ever a time when you felt that it was doing so, a particular request, then that might be a time to say no. And I'm not saying that's the only time, but if for example, and I know, I don't want to, I'm hard pressed to come up with an example, both because I don't want to guide your thoughts on a future case and also because it's hard to pull any fact pattern out from bullet points and make a great point. But I would say in general terms, you're making a recommendation to a legislative body, and your concerns are land use. Is this an appropriate step from the village for land use perspective, considering orderly future development of the village, considering effect on neighboring properties, public safety, factors of those, kind of along those lines?
Okay,
So-
thank you. Appreciate that.
And that, just the idea of the special use, part of the reason why that language is utilized, as Pat mentioned, is so that that does have to come before the table for discussion. So oftentimes things that are either new, emerging, or things that are a little unique, like the mixed use, for example, those sit underneath that special use so that there is some conversation that can take place, so that if we all see something that we're not 100% certain of, we've got an opportunity to talk it through. With regard to this case and some of these cases that are set before me here, I mostly say, in my point of view, as long as these things are not going to adversely affect the properties adjacent to them, this is a good use of the properties, the subject properties. And so as long as they're being installed correctly.
Am I correct in the understanding that if these weren't special use, if these were just, there's certain rules and you can put those in if you're meeting those rules, then the neighbors would not be notified that it was coming ahead? So not only does it give us the opportunity to discuss it, but it gives the neighbors the opportunity to voice if there are
That's
concerns
correct.
with that property.
It triggered, the special use triggers the change in zoning, which allows for public notification. So, correct.
And are the neighbors notified the side of the house that these are installed on? Do they have that kind of specific information?
Everything that we got in our packet is publicly available on the website, and
Okay.
as a part of that notification, it sort of points them towards that. These packets are all available to the public at all time.
And I pulled up in front of me the applicable section of the village code. It articulates, it's 10.10.2F, the consideration, some standards that the planning commission is considering the award of a special use. And I'm just, since the question came up, I want to go through these. And I know this is a little bit long, so I apologize, but some of the considerations or standards to apply is whether the proposed use will adversely affect other property developed or able to be developed to the uses already permitted, whether adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, and other necessary supporting facilities have been or are being provided, that adequate measures have been provided to accommodate ingress and egress. And some of these don't apply to every case, but they're generalized factors. To avoid congestion, not unduly impede surrounding traffic flows or create hazardous or unsafe conditions. That the standards for site development, including landscaping, will be such as to enhance the proposed use in its setting, screen, or so locate parking, loading, storage, and less attractive accessory uses away from the public view, and to otherwise complement the visual appearance of the area in which the proposed project is to be located. And that the proposed special use, if permitted, will conform to all other requirements of the district in which it is to be located, or if non-conforming, listing and necessary violations will be required subsequent to granting the special use permit. So those are, I think, are largely consistent with the summary I gave you, but that's the specific code language that lays out what your considerations are to include.
I have one more question, then I'll call it. One of the reasons why we consider solar panels to be a possible nuisance to neighboring properties is the reflection. Is it true that that's no longer a concern with the way they make the panels, that there's not really a reflection issue with those? Is that a true statement or not? Is that something we should be worried about?
I think they're gonna they're gonna collect it, not shoot it out. And for the next case, there's people here that are kind of experts in that field.
Okay.
But I think that they're not made that way. They're not made to be a glare to your neighbor.
Okay.
At least the ones that I've driven by and looked at recently that have been installed, there isn't anything like that.
Okay.
Just one comment. Looks like the solar installation is on an accessory building and not on the primary residence, which in a way is good because the way that's shaped, if there's any reflection, it's going to be toward the residence
Yeah.
rather than and it's not to the street. So,
Right.
I mean, to me, this looks like a very good insulation approach compared to what we were probably thinking about when we were looking at that would be installed on the residence, and then probably would be facing the street if it was a south facing.
Right.
So this looks like a real neat way to do it, to put it on the accessory building rather than on the residence.
Mr. Chair, and one other thing if I could throw out is if this becomes more commonplace, which we're starting to just start to see this
You bet.
come, to think this has to go through special use to me seems like it's going to become antiquated somewhere down the road. Lots of paperwork, time for people that want to use it. If it becomes commonplace, I guess I'm trying to see why it couldn't be almost like a site plan review thing where there are a set of standards that the village puts together that says these are the criteria we want to meet. It's reviewed by the permit writers.
Which those things exist already. So really, from our perspective, what it would take is we would just integrate it into the current zoning of R1, R2, R3, or
Which I
whatever.
just think going down the road
Yep.
in the future, that's the direction the village ought to head, because this could become 10 of these a month.
Tedious, yeah.
Yeah,
As
and
we
new
start to see this.
construction's going to maybe have them automatically built in, so that would
Right.
seem silly that they would
Yep.
have to go to two
I
forms of
agree.
approval.
I think as this stuff kind of continues to become not an emerging technology, but something that's consistently used, we're going to have to address that. Seeing 3 tonight, maybe that was just timing, but it's a good point. We might end up having to revisit the current zoning and see if there's some standards we just apply to residential zoning districts.
There was a comment, when we were going through the solar ordinance, when it was before you, the plan commission members, one of the local electrical contractors was here, and he made the comment, and I'm not an expert in this at all, but
Don't sell yourself short.
yeah. I remember him saying that down the road, he says the technology is really changing on this, and pretty soon you're not even gonna know that that is there. It's gonna look like your shingled roof or whatever your roof might be. You won't know it, but it's gonna be really serving the same purpose as what they're gonna be doing today or tonight with these requests. So I don't know, the technology isn't there yet maybe right now, but it sounds like that's where it's headed.
So if we do what you're proposing, though, it takes the public comment out of it. So the next door neighbor who may think that it adversely affects their property value would no longer have a voice. So I guess I would be hesitant to take that process out. You know, that gives people. I mean, not everybody thinks these things are nice to look at and wants them next to their property, especially if they, trying to get the most for their property when they sell it.
Yeah,
So-
and we don't have the power to do that. In effect, anyway, we could make a recommendation that that be done, and then it would become something that the village and the trustees would have to adopt as an action. So that would be an opportunity for the public to raise that concern if they had it. I think we're probably a ways off from it even needing to be the conversation piece, but as Commissioner Zober said, this may end up, as we move forward, this may end up being something we see a lot of, so.
When you said earlier that the materials were available to the public, how are they available to the public?
They're
Yeah.
online.
Yeah, the
It's-
packets.
So the person has to know where to look for it and
Well,
go to it?
they get that page one of the application that you have. Everyone within that 250-foot radius gets that. And if they, that ought to pique their interest enough if they have a concern that they can call us and I haven't heard from anyone, so.
So, yeah, the general public, not just the neighbors, the ability to see these things as posted minutes is available online at any time. It's a PDF, you click it, it opens up. But specific to neighbors that are informed by the village, anytime there's something like this that comes up, that application page is sent to them, which then alerts them to either call Roger or to hop online if they're, if they know what they're looking for. But it's in effect a way to sort of trigger a response if there's going to be one.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we approve this special use request.
Motion made. Do we have a second?
I second.
Call when ready.
Keach,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
Fick,
Yes.
Ritterbusch,
Yes.
Smock,
Yes.
Guile,
Yes.
Deweese,
Yes.
Zovers,
Yes.
Farrell,
Yes.
Through.
Thank you very much. Next up, petition number 19-3, special use. Subject property is 379 East Hazelwood Street, currently R1. Looking for R1 special use. Anyone from the public that wants to speak about this one? You guys have the information in your packet. Roger's pulling up the property here on the screens. Any questions or comments from the table? can even request part of Title 10 if you want Pat to speak, just read to us again. Really amazing order. So these two are going to be done by Legacy Solar?
Yes.
Okay.
So we didn't get any comments on this one either from the public, even though it faces the main street? Okay.
Yeah, now this is one, as an example, that where the solar panels are facing outward, huh? I was looking through the specifications to see if the question regarding the, how much of that reflection looks like very little.
I'm really finding it hard to imagine that we're ever going to reject one of these because of the direction that it faces. I mean, when you consider when a person puts a fence up in their yard, that is, I think, extremely more impactful on a neighbor, and we don't oversee that process. So that's just my 2 cents on that.
So if somebody had a problem with it being, and they were the neighbor, and they objected to it, you wouldn't listen to them?
I don't know on what grounds would they object. They don't like the looks of it.
Yeah,
I mean,
the
that-
thought that
people
it
get
affected their property value?
So the problem we need to be careful about is starting to legislate aesthetics.
Yeah.
Because we could be like, paint colors and the color, the shutter style.
That's kind of where I'm at.
But we're not.
Yeah.
This is a special use. This is,
Yeah.
the process is in place for people to object.
Currently it is, but I'm kind of starting to agree with Phil a little bit on this. And
Yeah, with a fence can be extremely more impactful. It could obstruct
Yeah.
your view. And yet, we don't, if a neighbor's upset with that, I don't know what the process is, but it doesn't come before this body.
All right, any questions, any more comments regarding this petition? If none, do we have a motion to approve?
I
So
make a mo-
moved.
Look at that, a race.
I lost. I'll second.
Thank you. Call when ready.
Neff,
Yes.
Thick,
Yes.
Ritterbush,
Yes,
Smock,
Yes?
Guile,
yes.
Deweese,
Yes.
Zobrist,
Yes.
Farrell,
Yes.
Keach.
Yes.
Approved.
Okay. Next up, petition 19-4, located 1507 Brookcrest Avenue, currently R1. Also looking for special use for the solar panels. This one, I believe, has the solar panels facing the rear. Any questions or comments regarding petition number 19-04? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve.
So made. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Matt. Call when ready.
Thick,
Yes.
Ritterbush,
yes,
Smock,
Yes?
Guile,
Yes.
Zobrist,
Yes.
Deweese,
Yes.
Farrell,
Yes.
Keach,
Yes.
Neff.
Yes.
Approved.
Thank you very much. No other business listed on the agenda this evening. Roger, anything from you or the village?
The only thing I guess I should mention is, I gotta look at the date here, May 28th, our meeting in May won't be on a Monday night, it'll be on a Tuesday night. So you can enjoy your Memorial.
I'm sick
Day.
that night. Okay, May the 28th. Thank you for letting us know.
My pleasure.
If there's nothing else, do we have a motion to adjourn? No race this time?
A motion.
Motion is made. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thanks, guys.